You're only good for paying the bills, aren't you, Eli? The words came out of my son-in-law's mouth like a punch in the stomach, in front of the whole family gathered for my granddaughter's birthday. The entire restaurant seemed to fall silent. My daughter Rebecca looked down, ashamed. My 3 grandchildren, 12-year-old Jake, 10-year-old Lucy, and 7-year-old Tommy, looked at me with an expression of pity that broke my heart. Brandon, my son-in-law of 8 years, smiled with that arrogance I had learned to hate. He had just announced to everyone that he had bought a new car, with the money I had lent him for the family's medical emergencies. "Daddy always helps us, doesn't he?" Rebecca murmured, touching my arm as if to comfort me. I smiled and nodded, as I always did. As I had always done for 8 long years of humiliation. My name is Eli Thompson. At 65, I just retired after 42 years working as an accountant at a consulting firm in Denver. I raised my daughter Rebecca alone after my wife Martha died in a car accident when Rebecca was only 5. It wasn't easy. Working 60 hours a week, cooking, cleaning, helping with homework, attending all the school presentations where I was the only single father in the audience. But it was worth every sacrifice when I saw Rebecca graduate with a degree in business from the University of Colorado. That's where she met Brandon. At first, he seemed like the perfect son-in-law. Handsome, naturally charming, always sweet-talking Rebecca. But little by little, the masks came off. First, there were the small loans. $50 here, $100 there. Always with promises of repayment that never materialized. Then came the comments. "Your dad has a lot of money saved up, right, babe? Government retirement must be good. Why doesn't he help more? Families should help each other." Rebecca began to repeat these phrases. "Dad, Brandon is right. You've worked so hard, you must have a good reserve. It would just be a loan." What she didn't know was that every dollar I lent her came from the account I had saved for her inheritance. 40 years of savings, stock sales, careful investments. All planned so that she and her grandchildren would have financial security. Over the past 2 years, it had already been $23,000. Always with the same excuse, "It's for the kids, Dad. For the good of the family." But that night at the restaurant, as Brandon laughed at his own cruel joke and the waiters avoided our gaze, something inside me changed. Or rather, something woke up. As I paid the bill, as always, and listened to Brandon planning aloud the next emergency that would require my money, I began to formulate a plan. Brandon had completely underestimated the man he thought he could manipulate. He saw a foolish and generous old man. I saw a parasite who was destroying my family. If you're enjoying this story of how an arrogant son-in-law discovered he had chosen the wrong father-in-law to humiliate, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what Brandon didn't know was that a retired accountant with 42 years of experience in financial auditing had very specific tools for dealing with people who abuse the trust of others. And I was ready to use every one of them. During the 3 days following that public humiliation at the restaurant, I started doing what I've always done best, investigating numbers. 42 years as an accountant taught me that people can lie with words, but numbers always tell the truth. Sitting in my home office, I spread out all the bank statements from the last 5 years. What I discovered turned my stomach. Brandon wasn't just a financial parasite. He was a systematic predator. It all started 3 months after his marriage to Rebecca. "Dad, Brandon had an emergency at work. They cut his salary temporarily. Could you lend us $500? Just until he gets back on his feet." $500 turned into $1,000. $1,000 turned into $2,000. Each loan came with a story more elaborate than the last. Health problems, investment opportunities, car emergencies, unexpected medical bills. The cruelest part was that he used my own grandchildren as an emotional shield. "It's so Jake can stay on the baseball team, Eli. Lucy needs braces now, or she'll miss the ideal window for treatment. Tommy is struggling in school, he needs urgent tutoring." How could I say no to my grandchildren? But looking at the bank statements, I discovered something that made my blood boil. In the same months that Brandon claimed to be broke, there were regular deposits into an account he thought I didn't know about. Deposits that matched exactly the amounts he borrowed from me. He was using my money to fund a lifestyle he couldn't sustain. The credit card accounts I was able to access, Rebecca still had me as her financial proxy from her college days, revealed an even more disturbing pattern. Dinners at restaurants costing $500 a tab. Designer clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. Trips to Vegas that he justified as work conferences. And worst of all, expensive jewelry purchased on dates that didn't coincide with birthdays, Mother's Day, or Christmas. Jewelry that Rebecca never wore when she visited me. On Wednesday night, I called my old friend Pete, who worked in the human resources department of the company where Brandon supposedly worked as a sales manager. Eli, old friend, good to hear your voice. How can I help you? Pete, I need a favor. Can you discreetly check the employment history of a Brandon Wells? He should have been working there for about 5 years. 15 minutes later, Pete called me back. His voice was tense. Eli, this guy was fired 2 years ago for falsifying sales reports. We caught him inflating numbers and stealing commissions from other salespeople. He was escorted out by security. My world fell apart. For 2 whole years, Brandon had been telling me he was working, complaining about the long hours, the pressure from his boss, the difficult colleagues. Every morning he left the house for work, and every night he came home exhausted from the day. Rebecca firmly believed she was married to a hard-working, dedicated man. She constantly told me how proud she was to have such a hard-working husband. The truth was, what was he doing all day? Spending my money? Planning his next scams? Looking for other sources of illicit income? On Thursday, I discreetly followed Brandon. I left the house an hour after him and found him at the mall, sitting in the food court with a blonde woman who was definitely not my daughter. They laughed, talked intimately, and when they thought no one was looking, they kissed. $23,000. 5 years of lies. My daughter being deceived. My grandchildren being used as emotional bait. And now I discovered there was another woman involved. I went home and locked myself in my office. I opened a new file on my computer and began typing, Evidence against Brandon Wells Financial and Personal Investigation. For 42 years, I had helped companies uncover fraud, embezzlement, and corruption schemes. I had traced money through offshore accounts, uncovered ghost employees, and exposed executives who embezzled charity funds. Brandon had chosen the wrong father-in-law to try to deceive. On Friday night, Rebecca called me. Her voice was excited, almost euphoric. Dad, Brandon got an amazing promotion. They doubled his salary. We'll be able to pay you back all the money you lent us. Which company gave him that promotion, Rebecca? The same one he's always worked for, Dad. Why do you ask? Just curious. I'm happy for you. I hung up the phone and went back to my computer. Now it wasn't just about the money. It was about my daughter being systematically deceived and humiliated. It was about my grandchildren growing up with a pathological liar as a father figure. It was about a man who had the audacity to call me useless in public while living off my generosity. As I typed the first lines of my plan, the phone rang again. It was Brandon. Hi, Eli. How's the favorite father-in-law doing? Listen, an incredible investment opportunity has come up. We have to act fast. Could you lend us $5,000? It's guaranteed, man. In 3 months, you'll get $7,000 back. Sure, Brandon. Let's talk in person tomorrow. How about you come over at 2 in the afternoon? Perfect. You won't regret it, Eli. This time I'll make you proud of me. After I hung up, I smiled for the first time in days. Yes, Brandon, you're definitely going to make me proud. Proud that I've finally decided to stop being your victim. Tomorrow would be the beginning of the end of his little parasitic operation. On Saturday at 2 o'clock sharp, Brandon parked his BMW, which I now knew had been financed with my money, in my garage. He walked into the house with his usual overconfidence, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. Eli, my favorite father-in-law. How are you? Man, you have no idea what an opportunity I've brought us today. We sat down in the living room. I had made coffee, the same coffee he criticized so much when Rebecca wasn't around. I discreetly turned on the recording on my cell phone. Tell me about this opportunity, Brandon. He opened the briefcase theatrically, scattering papers across the coffee table. They were impressive documents, with colorful graphics and profit projections that would make any investor dream. It's a real estate development project in Austin, Texas. Luxury condos for young executives. The market is hot, demand is huge, and if we get in now with the first $5,000, we're guaranteed a 140% return in 6 months. Interesting. And who's behind this project? A company called Pinnacle Development. They already have municipal approvals, feasibility studies, everything in place. They just need the last investors to start construction. As he spoke, I leafed through the documents. 42 years as an accountant had taught me to spot financial fraud. And those papers had more red flags than a military parade in Moscow. Brandon, can I ask you some technical questions? Professional to professional. Sure, Eli. Ask anything you want. What's the tax ID number for this Pinnacle Development? He hesitated for a split second. It's here somewhere. He started rummaging through the papers. What about the environmental impact studies? In Texas, especially for projects over 10 million, they're mandatory. Oh yes, of course. They mentioned that. It must be in this other folder I left in the car. I see. And tell me, Brandon, how did you find out about this opportunity? Was it through your company? That's when he made the fatal mistake. Exactly. My supervisor at North Point Industries gave me this inside information. He said it was only for trusted employees. North Point Industries. The company where Pete, my friend, worked in HR. The same company that had confirmed that Brandon had been fired 2 years ago for falsifying documents. What a coincidence, Brandon. My friend Pete works at North Point Industries. Do you know him? Pete Morrison. The color drained from Brandon's face. Pete Morrison? No, I don't think so. It's a big company, right? Lots of people. Sure, a lot of people. He's been working in HR for 15 years. He knows everyone. Brandon started to sweat. Literally. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Well, Eli, the important thing is the opportunity. 5,000 now, 7,000 back in 6 months. Simple math. That's right. Math has always been my specialty. I picked up my phone. You know what makes me curious? Rebecca told me yesterday that you got a promotion at North Point. Congratulations, by the way. Oh yes, thank you. It was a surprise to everyone. I imagine. Especially considering you were fired from there 2 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Brandon stared at me like a deer frozen in the headlights of a truck. What do you mean? I mean, I called my friend Pete. He told me about your dismissal. Falsifying sales reports, was that it? Brandon stood up abruptly, knocking his coffee cup onto the rug Martha had hand-embroidered 20 years ago. Eli, look, I can explain. Can you? Then explain to me about the blonde you were with at the mall on Thursday. The one you were kissing wasn't my daughter. Now he was as pale as a sheet. His hands trembled as he tried to gather the fake documents scattered across the table. You followed me? I didn't have to follow you very far. You weren't exactly discreet. That's when my phone rang. It was Rebecca. Dad, is Brandon there? He forgot his cell phone at home and has an important call to make. I looked at Brandon, who was watching me with desperate eyes. Yes, sweetheart. Do you want to talk to him? Please. I handed the phone to Brandon. He hesitated, then answered in a forced, normal voice. Hi, honey. What important call? Oh, that one. Yes, I've taken care of it. No, you don't need to worry. Everything's fine here. I'm just finalizing the details of the investment with your father. When he hung up, we stared at each other in absolute silence. 2 generations of men who knew exactly where they stood. Brandon, I finally said, you have 5 seconds to tell me the truth about everything. About the money, about your job, about your mistress, about your plans for my daughter. 5 full seconds of honesty, and maybe we can settle this like civilized men. He looked at me for a long moment. I could see the calculation going on in his mind. Could he keep lying? Could he convince me somehow? Was there still a way out? Or, I continued, you can continue to treat me like an old fool who doesn't understand anything. In that case, tomorrow morning, Rebecca will receive a package with all the evidence I've collected. Photos of you with your mistress. Bank statements showing where our money went. Recordings of your lies. And a copy of your termination report from North Point Industries. Brandon sat down heavily on the sofa, buried his face in his hands, and for the first time in 8 years, told the truth. Eli, I've ruined everything. It was at that moment, listening to my son-in-law finally admit to years of lies and betrayal, that I made the decision that would change everything. It was no longer enough to protect my money or even expose his lies. I needed to protect my daughter and my grandchildren from a predator who had built his entire life on falsehoods. And to do that right, I would need professional help. While Brandon cried on my couch, I was already planning the call I would make that night to my nephew David, the family law attorney. The war was just beginning. During the 3 days following Brandon's confession, my house became a command center. 42 years as an accountant had taught me that every fraud leaves traces. And Brandon had left a trail that led straight to the precipice. On Monday morning, I called my nephew David, a family law attorney in Denver. Uncle Eli. What a surprise. How are you? David, I need your help. It's about Rebecca and the kids. They're in danger, but they don't know it. I explained the whole situation in detail. David was silent for a long moment after I finished. Uncle, this is more serious than you realize. If he's lying about his job and using financial manipulation, he may be planning to disappear with the money when the situation becomes untenable. Exactly what I thought. I'll prepare a legal dossier. But I need more evidence to protect Rebecca and the grandchildren. Can you document the money transfers? And this story about the mistress, if you can get proof of adultery, it will greatly strengthen the divorce case. It was exactly what I was hoping to hear. On Tuesday, I hired Marcus Johnson, a private investigator David recommended. Marcus had 20 years of experience in cases of marital infidelity and financial fraud. Eli, from what you've told me, this Brandon guy is an amateur con artist. 3 years doing the same thing? He's going to slip up, and when he does, we'll be there to document it. I gave Marcus all the information I had collected: times, places, behavior patterns. Marcus smiled as he reviewed my data. Man, you should consider changing careers. This is better organized than most police files I've ever seen. On Wednesday, I implemented the first phase of the plan. I called Rebecca using the most natural pretext in the world. My daughter, how are things? I miss you. Hi Dad. We're fine. Brandon is very excited about that investment he talked to you about. He said you agreed to lend him the $5,000. My stomach churned. Even after being exposed, Brandon was lying to Rebecca about our conversation. Rebecca, can I ask you a question? How are your finances going? Do you have access to the accounts? Oh Dad, you know how it is. Brandon takes care of those things. He's much better with numbers than I am. He says I shouldn't worry about those complicated issues. What about his job? How's the promotion going? Amazing. He's working on huge projects. Yesterday he stayed late for a video conference with clients in Texas. He got home almost at midnight. I wrote everything down. Marcus had started following Brandon on Tuesday. According to his report, the night before Brandon had been at a bar downtown with the same blonde, with no video conference in sight. Rebecca, how about dinner here on Saturday? I haven't seen the grandchildren in a while. We'd love to, Dad. I'll talk to Brandon. Perfect. Saturday would be the day of reckoning. But first, I needed more ammunition. On Thursday, Marcus called me with news. Eli, I struck gold. Yesterday, I followed your son-in-law to an apartment in Cherry Creek. He has a key. He stayed there for 2 hours with the blonde. I have photos, videos, everything properly dated and geolocated. Did you find out who she is? Amanda Foster, 26 years old, works as a bartender at the Marriott Hotel downtown. And here's where it gets interesting. She posted a photo of herself with Brandon on Instagram 3 weeks ago. The caption read, "With my future husband." She thinks he's going to marry her. My blood boiled. Brandon wasn't just cheating on Rebecca, he was promising marriage to another woman. There's more, Eli. I investigated his finances through contacts I have in the banking sector. Brandon has a secret account at First National Bank. Over the past 6 months, he has deposited exactly $23,300 into that account. Guess where that money came from? If you're following this journey of how a retired accountant is exposing a family con artist, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see every step of this carefully planned revenge. On Friday, I had a crucial conversation with Pete, my friend in HR. Pete, I need more information about Brandon Wells. You said he was fired for forgery. Do you have the details? I have the files here, Eli. He created phantom customers, falsified sales, and embezzled commissions. He stole approximately $15,000 from the company before we found out. North Point didn't press criminal charges because they didn't want the negative publicity, but it's all documented. Can I have a copy of those files? Officially, I can't. But if I left some papers on my desk and went out to lunch. Pete was a true friend. That afternoon, while I was organizing all the evidence, Rebecca called me. Dad, Brandon can't go on Saturday. An emergency came up at work. He has to travel to Austin to resolve a problem with an important client. Austin. The same city as the fake investment Brandon had offered me. That's too bad, Rebecca. What about you and the kids? We're going. Actually, it will be nice to have some time just us. Brandon has been very stressed with work lately. Stressed? Of course he was. Keeping so many lies going at once must be exhausting. Saturday morning, Marcus called me early. Eli, your son-in-law didn't travel to Austin. He's been at the Cherry Creek apartment since last night. And there's something new. Yesterday he withdrew $5,000 in cash from a secret account. $5,000. The same amount he had borrowed for the fake investment. Marcus, I need you to document everything that happens today. Photos, videos, times. This may be our last chance to catch him red-handed before the revelation. I'm already in position, Eli. No detail will escape me. At 2 in the afternoon, Rebecca arrived with her grandchildren. Jake, Lucy, and Tommy ran to hug me, while Rebecca looked tired. How are you, my daughter? Fine, Dad. Just a little worried about Brandon. He's been working so hard. Sometimes I think he's burning himself out. While the children played in the yard, I set the stage for the most difficult conversation of my life. Rebecca, can I show you something in my office? It's about financial planning. I thought you should be more involved with the family finances. Sure, Dad. You're right. Maybe it's time to understand these things better. I led my daughter to the office where, over the course of a week, I had meticulously organized the evidence of the betrayal of the man she loved. On the desk were photos of Brandon with Amanda, bank statements from a secret account, documents from North Point Industries about his resignation, and spreadsheets showing where every borrowed dollar had actually ended up. Daddy, what's all this? Rebecca, sit down. I need to tell you about your husband. And when I'm done, you'll understand why we need to protect you and the children. I saw the exact moment when my daughter's world began to crumble. But I also saw something else, the first glimpse of the same strength that had helped her graduate from college against all odds. It was time to give Rebecca back the power that Brandon had stolen from her, lie by lie. And when I was done, Brandon would find out that he had picked the wrong family to try to destroy. Rebecca was silent for 5 full minutes after I finished showing her all the evidence. 5 minutes of looking at the photos of Brandon kissing Amanda, reading the bank statements from the secret account, absorbing the magnitude of the betrayal. When she finally spoke, her voice was strangely calm. Dad, are you sure these photos are recent? Marcus took them the day before yesterday. Look at the date and time in the corner. She examined every detail as if she were studying for a test. The daughter I raised to be meticulous was methodically processing the destruction of her life. And that bank account, $23,300. That's exactly what you've borrowed from me over the past 2 years. Yes. Rebecca put her hands over her face and remained that way for a long moment. When she took them away, her eyes were dry, but there was something new there. A coldness I hadn't seen since she found out her college boyfriend was cheating on her with her best friend. Dad, where is he now? According to Marcus, at the Cherry Creek apartment with Amanda. They spent the night there. The apartment he pays for with his money. Our money, Rebecca. Yours too. She got up and walked to the window. In the backyard, Jake was teaching Lucy and Tommy how to play baseball. 3 innocent children who had no idea that their lives were about to change completely. He said he was traveling to Austin on business. Rebecca. For a company that fired him 2 years ago. That's right. She turned to me, and for a moment I saw the 5-year-old girl who cried when I told her that Mommy wasn't coming home anymore. Daddy, what do I do now? First, you call David, my lawyer nephew. He already has all the documents prepared. Second, you change the passwords on all your accounts. Third, you decide if you want to confront Brandon alone or if you want me to be there. Would you be willing to stay? Rebecca, I've spent 42 years protecting you. I'm not going to stop now. At 4:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was Marcus. Eli, your son-in-law is on the move. He just left the apartment and is heading to your house. He seems nervous. Do you want me to keep following him? Keep going, but keep your distance. And Marcus, if he makes any suspicious moves, call me immediately. Rebecca had called David, who would arrive in an hour. She had also changed all the passwords and transferred the remaining money from their joint accounts to a personal account that Brandon didn't know about. Should the kids be here when he arrives? She asked. No. They don't need to see this. How about sending them to your friend Jennifer's house? They can spend the night there. Rebecca called Jennifer, explaining that there was a family emergency, and she needed help with the children. Jennifer, who was divorced and understood family complications, asked no questions. At 5:15, the children left with Jennifer, confused but excited about the prospect of a night of movies and popcorn. At 5:30, David arrived with a briefcase full of legal documents. Uncle Eli, Rebecca, you've done an exceptional job gathering evidence. With this, we can file for divorce on grounds of just cause, nullify any responsibility Rebecca has for the debts Brandon fraudulently incurred, and ensure that he has no access to the couple's assets. And criminally? Rebecca asked. Marital fraud, misrepresentation, possible tax evasion. If you want to prosecute him criminally, he could get 2 to 5 years. I don't want him to go to prison, Rebecca said, surprising us both. I want him to disappear from our lives and never come back. At 6 o'clock, Rebecca's cell phone rang. It was Brandon. Honey, I'm on my way home. The meeting in Austin was cancelled at the last minute. I'm going to stop and pick up some pizza for dinner. Rebecca looked at me and David before answering. Actually, Brandon, I'm at my dad's house. Why don't you come here? I need to talk to you about something. Sure, babe. Is everything okay? Everything is perfect. 20 minutes later, Brandon parked in my garage. Through the window, I could see him checking his reflection in the mirror, adjusting his shirt, preparing his salesman's smile. He entered the house as he always did, with the excessive confidence of someone who believes he has complete control over the situation. Hey, Eli. How's it going, father-in-law? Rebecca said she needed to talk to me about something. Yes, Rebecca replied, getting up from the armchair where she had been waiting. I need to talk about Amanda Foster. The blood drained from Brandon's face so quickly that I thought he was going to faint. What? Who is Amanda Foster? David, who had been sitting quietly in the corner of the room, spoke for the first time. Mr. Wells, I'm David Thompson, a family law attorney. I represent your wife in the divorce proceedings she is initiating. Brandon looked from David to Rebecca, then to me, like a cornered animal looking for a way out. Divorce? Rebecca, what kind of joke is this? What's the catch? Rebecca walked over to the coffee table and picked up one of the photos Marcus had taken. It was Brandon and Amanda kissing at the entrance to the apartment. The trick is that this photo was taken the day before yesterday. The same day you told me you were in Austin on business. Brandon took the photo with trembling hands. Rebecca, I can explain. Can you explain this too? She showed him the statements from the secret account. $23,300. The same amount we borrowed from my father. And this, David added, showing the North Point Industries report. Your dismissal for document falsification 2 years ago. Brandon slumped onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. You don't understand. I was going to tell you everything. I was just waiting for the right moment. The right moment for what? Rebecca asked, her voice laden with a coldness I had never heard before. To tell me that you haven't worked in 2 years? That you have a 26-year-old mistress who thinks she's going to marry you? That you stole money from my father to fund your double life? Rebecca, I love you. No, her voice cut through the air like a knife. You don't love anyone but yourself. Because if you loved me, you wouldn't have used our children as emotional bargaining chips to manipulate my father. It was at that moment that Brandon made his last mistake. Instead of taking responsibility, instead of begging for forgiveness, he decided to attack. Your father always hated me. He always looked for a way to separate us. This is all his doing. I slowly rose from my chair. Brandon, for 8 years you took advantage of my generosity, lied to my daughter, manipulated my grandchildren, and publicly humiliated me. I never had to set anything up against you. You did all the work yourself. Eli, you don't understand the pressure I was under. The pressure to lie every day? The pressure to steal money? The pressure to cheat on your wife? Brandon stood up abruptly, pointing his finger at me. You sabotaged my life. You investigated me like I was a criminal. You are a criminal, David interrupted calmly. Technically, you committed at least 4 crimes: marital fraud, misrepresentation, embezzlement, and possible tax evasion. That's when Brandon completely lost control. You think you're so smart, don't you? But I still have rights. I'm the children's father. Half the assets are mine. Rebecca laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, but the bitter sound of someone who finally sees the whole truth. Brandon, you have no rights. Not when you built our entire marriage on lies. The children are mine. You can't stop me from seeing them. Yes, I can, David said, showing a document. We have evidence that you used the children to financially manipulate their grandfather. That is considered psychological abuse. Any visits will be supervised by the court. Brandon looked at the 3 of us, finally realizing there was no way out. You destroyed my life. No, I said, standing up and walking toward him. You destroyed your own life. We just documented the destruction. And now, Rebecca added, you have a choice. Sign the divorce papers, give up any claim to the assets, agree to supervised visits with the children, and get out of our lives without drama. In return, we won't press criminal charges. And if I don't agree? David smiled coldly. Then we'll see you in criminal court, where every piece of this evidence will become public record. Your new girlfriend will find out through the newspaper that you're married and a liar. Your future employers will find your criminal record when they do a background check. And you'll spend the next 2 to 5 years in prison. Brandon was silent for a long moment, processing his limited options. Where do I sign? As Brandon signed the documents with trembling hands, my phone rang. It was Marcus. Eli, his girlfriend, just called him 5 times in a row. I think she's on to something. I smiled and hung up. Brandon's empire of lies was collapsing from all directions simultaneously. When he finished signing, Rebecca spoke for the last time as his wife. Brandon, you have until Sunday night to get your things out of the house. After that, the locks will be changed. Brandon left without saying a word, defeated, humiliated, alone. But our story was just beginning. 3 months after the confrontation, life had taken a completely different turn for all of us. Brandon had disappeared from Denver the same week he signed the divorce papers. Marcus, my private investigator, informed me that he had tried to reconcile with Amanda, but she had kicked him out of the house after discovering he was married and financially ruined. He's living in a rented room in Aurora, Marcus told me during our last conversation. He works as a salesman at a used car dealership. He earns a basic commission and has to take the bus because he can't even afford a bicycle. I felt no satisfaction at this information. I felt only a quiet understanding that the consequences had run their natural course. Rebecca had been completely transformed during those months. The insecure woman who depended on her husband for all financial decisions had become a determined businesswoman. With the money recovered from Brandon's accounts, David had managed to track down every penny through the courts. She opened a small marketing consulting firm for local businesses. Dad, you know what's funny? She said to me during one of our weekly dinners. I always knew I had a knack for business. Brandon was the one who convinced me that I didn't understand anything about money. The grandchildren had blossomed without Brandon's toxic presence. Jake, who used to spend hours playing video games to escape the tensions at home, now played on the school baseball team. Lucy had discovered a talent for drawing and was taking art classes. Tommy, the youngest, no longer wet the bed, a problem that had started when Brandon had intensified his financial manipulations. Most impressive was how they dealt with their father's absence. "Grandpa," Jake asked me one afternoon while helping me organize my office, "do you think Dad Brandon will come back?" "I don't know, kid. How do you feel about it?" He thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes I miss him. But not the version who is always nervous and yelling at Mom. If he comes back, I just want it to be the good version of him." This emotional maturity from a 12-year-old moved me deeply. Brandon had lost not only a family, but extraordinary children who could have been his greatest achievement. The most surprising transformation happened to me. At 65, I discovered that retirement did not mean irrelevance. Rebecca invited me to be a financial advisor for her company. I began giving lectures on retirement planning at the local community college. 3 couples who were friends asked for my help in reviewing their family finances. I had found purpose again. David, my lawyer nephew, called me on a Thursday with an unexpected update. "Uncle Eli, Brandon tried to file an appeal claiming he was coerced into signing the divorce papers. The judge wouldn't even consider the case. He said the evidence of marital fraud was so extensive that any attempt to reverse the decision would be considered procedural bad faith." What about visitation rights? He missed the deadline to request them. Technically, he still has rights as their biological father, but he would have to undergo psychological evaluation and a financial rehabilitation program. From the looks of it, he has no interest in fighting for it. It was exactly what I expected. Brandon had never been a real father, just someone who used the children as tools of manipulation. Without financial advantage, they had no value to him. 6 months after the confrontation, Rebecca organized a birthday party to celebrate my 66th birthday. It was a small gathering, her, the children, David and his family, a few close neighbors, and Pete, my friend from HR who had been instrumental in exposing Brandon's lies. During dinner, Rebecca stood up to make a toast. "Dad, for 8 years you watched our family be torn apart from the inside. You saw your own savings being stolen, your daughter being manipulated, your grandchildren being used as pawns in a cruel game. And throughout it all, you remained present, loving, patient." She paused, her eyes welling up. "But when the time came to protect us, you didn't hesitate. You used your intelligence, your experience, and your resources to save us from someone who could have destroyed our lives completely. You taught us that true strength is not reacting with anger, but acting with wisdom." Jake stood up too. "Grandpa, I used to think that real men were like Dad Brandon. That they spoke loudly, bought expensive things, and always got what they wanted. Now I know that real men are like you. That they protect their family, speak the truth, and do what is right even when it's difficult." Lucy and Tommy ran to hug me, and for a moment I felt the emotional weight of the entire journey. The pain of discovery, the anger of betrayal, the determination of the investigation, the relief of resolution. But most of all, I felt gratitude. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Brandon. "Eli, I know you have no reason to forgive me. I also know I don't deserve a second chance with Rebecca and the kids. I'm writing because I finally understand what I did. Not just with the money, but with the trust, with the love, with the family you built over a lifetime. I'm in therapy and working to become a better person. Not to win you back, but to become the man I should have been from the start. Thank you for stopping me before I caused irreparable damage. Brandon." I showed the letter to Rebecca. She read it silently and handed it back. "It's a start," was all she said. I kept the letter in a drawer in my office. Not as a trophy of victory, but as a reminder that even the most lost people can find their way back to humanity. A year after the confrontation, I'm sitting in the same office where I first discovered evidence of Brandon's betrayal. But now, instead of bank statements and investigation reports, my desk is covered with business plans for Rebecca's company and drawings by her grandchildren. Yesterday, Lucy showed me a school project about my hero. She had written about me. "My grandfather taught me that heroes don't wear capes or fly. Heroes use Excel spreadsheets and know how to ask the right questions. Heroes protect their families not with strength, but with intelligence. And when bad people try to hurt those they love, heroes don't yell or fight. they collect evidence. If this story of how an accountant grandfather turned a situation of financial abuse into a lesson in justice touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We have many other stories about people who found strength where they least expected it and used that strength to protect their loved ones. Brandon tried to reduce me to someone who was only good for paying bills. In the end, he discovered that underestimating a retired accountant with free time and grandchildren to protect was the biggest miscalculation of his life. The last I heard, he was still living in Aurora, trying to rebuild a life based on honesty instead of manipulation. Me? Well, I'm here in my office, surrounded by the family I helped save, planning the future we almost lost. And I can say with certainty, the best revenge is not to destroy those who hurt you. It is to build something so strong and beautiful that attempts at destruction become irrelevant.